Aloha and welcome to the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center's An Afternoon with the Author, where we invite authors from across the state and nation to come on and talk to us a little bit more about the backstory behind their work. Good afternoon. My name is Deidre Teagarden. I'm the Executive Director here at the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center, where our mission is to inspire people to find the hero within themselves through the legacy of our Nisei veterans. And you can find out more information about our center on the web at nvmc.org. We are thrilled to have all of you with us today for this lovely talk story with Governor George Ariyoshi. To our friends from Japan, we just want to say, 本日はお忙しい中ご参加くださり誠にありがとうございます。
Oh, 日本語上手ね。
いえいえ、まだまだ。Before I introduce our speaker today, just wanted to give you a few housekeeping items. As always, we love to take your questions, and you can send those in as you think of them via that little question and answer box at the bottom left hand of your screen. As always, we couldn't do this without our corporate sponsors, so we want to say mahalo to all of them. You saw their logos as you were getting on the call today. And as always, this is being recorded and will be available on our Nisei Veterans Memorial Center YouTube channel in about a week. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today. George Ariyoshi is an American lawyer and politician who served as the third governor of Hawaii from 1974 to 1986. He is Hawaii's longest-serving governor and the first American of Asian descent to serve as governor of a U.S. state. He assumed gubernatorial powers and duties when Governor John Burns was declared incapacitated in October of 1973 and was subsequently elected in 1974. His lengthy tenure is a record and likely to remain unbroken due to term limits enacted after he left office. Ariyoshi is considered an elder statesman of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Concerned about Hawaii's future, Governor Ariyoshi has spent the greater part of the last 20 years writing his newest book, Hawaii's Future. This book is a guide and a message to young leaders, but I will say that regardless of your age, this is just a very timely, a very remarkable book, and I encourage everybody to get it. Governor Ariyoshi, as always, it is wonderful to see you. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, you know, you launched our speaker series a few years ago. We were talking with our leadership series. You flew over and spent the day with us talking about leadership here on Maui. And you've always been such a friend to the center. So thank you so much. So I would like to start just talking a little bit more about your background and before we talk about the book. And in this book, in your other book, Obligation to All, you talk about the importance of values. You talk about your parents. And I just wanted to have you share what impact those values from your parents had and continue to have on your long career?
Well, those values are very important, I think, for us to follow them now, but I think more important for what happens in Hawaii. And so these things that we do now will have a great impact on the future. And we want to be sure that we do the right things now. That future will be better, not so much for us, but for those who will be following us. I talk about stewardship a lot. All of us must have the opportunity for us to enjoy Hawaii, enjoy our life here. But we must never, ever forget that when we enjoy, we must not forget the opportunity for others to be able to enjoy Hawaii in a way that we will be able to enjoy them.
You know, and you've written this, you've taken the last 20 years to really put this book together. You know, and you know, talk a little bit about growing up in 1930s Hawaii and, you know, how that impacted your decisions, especially, you know, when you talk about stewardship and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, many of the people in Hawaii, most of the people in Maui, grew up in plantations. And I grew up here in the city, and I did not be part of a plantation family. And therefore, my life was very different as going up. I think that rather than be impacted by the plantations, my father and my mother had a greater impact on my life than would have been had I lived on a plantation with them. And I learned from them that it's very important that we care for each other. We do things for each other to remember that what we do have great impact on the other people. And I learned from things like they were telling me all the time, "Gambaru, hang in there, don't give up. Haji o kakasanai de. Don't bring shame to yours or family, and then don't boast about what you do. Remember that you do things better if there are many people participate with you, and say to other people, thank you for participating." And the word is "okage-sama-de," because of your participation. And so my parents, I think, had a greater impact on my life than anybody else because we lived small community, small family.
And you talk about that throughout the book, that importance of creating that dialogue with the general public, and I want to get to that in a little bit. But you know, one of the things you mentioned about your father was the importance of schooling. You know, and there was going from elementary school to middle school. It was not a given, but how important your parents and your father in particular felt that education was. Um, you know, where did that come from?
My father always told me that education is so important, and you get only as far as your education it goes with you. And so he always told me, study hard. When I was in eighth grade, I came home one day and I said, Papa, I want to become a lawyer. And my father was so happy. And he told me at that time, good, he will do everything that he can to help me. And he said, I'll give you the shirt off my back to make that possible.
I didn't know that. So as young as that, you already knew what you wanted to be, and uh, you know, throughout the book you talk about fairness, and so I am assuming that perhaps one of the reasons you were so intent on becoming a lawyer was your this feeling of fairness that you is so important to you. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. I also very strongly that in order for you to be fair, you got to know what the community is. You got to know what's happening so that it can be in the context of the community. So fairness it's not a word that stands by itself. It means together we can do things that will be fair.
Okay. And again, you know, you talk about that in the book. Before we turn to the book, I want to ask, just want to talk about two more things. You know, I think a lot of people on this call might not know that you served in occupied Japan for the Military Intelligence Service. And in fact, one of the photographs that we saw early on when people were joining the call up on the top left is a picture of you headed out for service. And you know, how long were you in Japan? What made you go? What did your parents think about it?
I entered the service as the war in Europe was coming to an end. So I knew that when I got into service, I was going to be involved in the Japanese Pacific Theater. But when I was taking my basic training, the war in Japan came to an end. And immediately I was selected to go to Minnesota to become part of the MIS, Military Intelligence Service. And that's what happened. Got my further training there, and then they sent me to Japan. By the time I got to Japan, my enlistment period was going to be very short. So I only spent about 5, 6 months in Japan. When I got to Japan, I didn't know very much about the country. And I heard MacArthur talk about not wanting to get anything from the Japan government, from the Japanese, not wanting to punish. But MacArthur saying, that he wanted Japan to make a very rapid economic recovery, that he wanted Japan to become a democratic nation, and it's to have a constitution. And so that's what I understood MacArthur and our state, our country was wanting to do. The first Japanese that I ever met was a 7-year-old boy, young, shining shoes. I was very concerned about his shining shoes there at that age. And I asked him, how old are you? And he told me he was 7 years old. And I asked him, why are you doing this? I was astounded by his answer. He told me, my country is hurting. Kuni ga komattiru. My family is hurting. So I want to do a little bit that I can to help that process. And a 7-year-old boy understanding how his country is hurt and how he must do whatever he can to help. And so I thought to myself at that time, MacArthur wants this country to make a very rapid recovery with a constitution. And if that represents the feelings of the Japanese people, my feeling was that Japan was going to make a very rapid recovery. I tried to do everything I could during that period I was there, talking to the Japanese, ganbatte, ganbatte, do what you have to do to make it possible for Japan to recover as a democratic nation. And I enjoyed my stay. I was assigned to antitrust and cartels, and they wanted me to re-enlist to stay for a longer period. But I kept on thinking, hey, I got to get back home quickly so I can go back to school and go become a lawyer quickly. And so I decided not to enlist, and I went home.
You know, and the values of that 7-year-old, the ganbaru and the making sure that he's helping his family and his country, echo the values that your parents taught to you. And subsequently, you spent a lot of time back and forth, or you had a lot of connections with Japan over the years, whether it was as an attorney or as governor. That must have made a big impact on you.
Yes, I felt very strongly that it's a two-way street, that Japan must want to be very close to America, and America must also want to be very close to America, and that they have coming together. But what was very important in this process, not the country, what the country does, very important, what the people do and the feelings. So while I was here back in Hawaii, I tried to encourage participation, Japanese Americans, Japan, America, working together in many, many ways. These cities where people establish this kind of warm feelings towards one another.
And that was a big part of your governorship. But so when you came back, you went to law school, correct? And
yes.
Then at Michigan, correct?
Yes.
University of Michigan. And then you came back to Hawaii. And at what point did you become interested in politics? How long were you working in private sector as an attorney before that bug got you?
I graduated from law school in 1953, and I ran for office in 1954. So during that short period of time, I was still very interested and very happy in the practicing law. Then one day somebody asked me if I would go with him to meet someone at the YMCA, the old YMCA. So I went and I met Jack Burns for the first time. And Jack Burns wanted to know my background, how I felt about Hawaii at that particular time, at a time when Big Five large companies totally controlled the economy of the then territory. And when we talked, he told me, run for office. I thought he was talking to somebody else. I turned around to look. He said, no, you run for office because there will be some people running on the other side. Danny Noe, Spock Matsunaga, Russell Kono, and Masato Doi, those were running on the other side. So you run in the 5th district. And so it was only 3 days to the filing deadline, only 33 days for the election. And the district I was going to run on was the largest district on Oahu, Nuuanu Avenue dividing line, and all the way around the country back to Kaneohe. And I only had, when I made that decision, 30 days before the election, I had a very short period of time to campaign. Well, I can't.
That's an incredibly short amount of time to campaign and an incredibly short amount of time to make that decision. But you won.
Yes.
And you were the youngest state representative at the time, correct?
Right. Yes.
When were you with First Hawaiian Bank? When were you on the board at First Hawaiian Bank? Because you were one of the first Asian Americans to be on a board. Was that
in 1960?
after? Okay.
Yeah. 1963, after I had been in legislature for 7-8 years. And I was approached. And I was reluctant at first because I knew that my colleagues were going to criticize me having sold off to get a nice position. But I decided I was going to accept the position because I was concerned about two things. Number one, I was very concerned that the Big Five still had a great deal of influence in the community, and the big organizations complied with what the Big Five wanted. So the Big Five had a great deal of saying about who was going to be promoted. The other thing was where the monies that were being deposited were going to be loaned. And I felt that there were two things very important. I wanted the people at the bank, local people who worked hard at that point to make the bank good. I wanted them to be able to get the opportunity to advance when opening took place. I wanted also the loans that were made would be made to local businesses, local people also. So those are the two things that I wanted that made me accept the board membership.
And you were able to accomplish that, correct?
That's right. The first board member I went to see, he shook my hands. And when I told him what I wanted to happen, he told me, I was waiting for you. And there were many board members who felt the same way, but they could not themselves do or make it happen. And so when I got there, when I started to speak up, I had most board members agree that we had to open up, we had to take care of the people who worked hard at the bank to get promoted internally, and to also be sure that we made loans to take care of the people and the businesses of Hawaii.
So maybe that's a good segue into the book. The book, I mean, you were talking about things in 1974 and earlier that are as much of today's conversation. You talked about homeless and rail and campaign finance reform and conservation, over tourism, climate change. So, I mean, and that was how many years ago? What made you so forward thinking, and you know, how can we get these things to actually to happen, which is of course a huge question, but how were you so forward thinking?
Let me go back even further. Before I became governor, when I was in the legislature, the one very most important piece of legislation we passed was the land use law. At that time, people who had large ownership of land, they could do anything they wanted with it. But we decided that we wanted to see preservation. And so we passed a land use law which categorized all of the lands in Hawaii into several categories. One was preservation, conservation. So these lands will remain forever until changed, forever in preservation and conservation. We wanted the agricultural land to be zoned for agriculture and remain there unless Land Use Commission made them change. We wanted urban lands so that the city, the counties could take that urban land and make it do whatever they wanted to do. And then we had the rural proper land. Rural areas remain rural. And so that land use law was very important in establishing the categories of rights, ways in which land in Hawaii was going to be used. When I became governor, I wanted to make sure that we complied and met the terms of the land use commission, land use laws. I appointed commission members who would do the things necessary to keep our lands in that kind of condition. I also felt very strongly about the economy and about the need for us to look at what we have to do. When I became governor, we had nice hotels being built, but I felt it very important for us as a government to say, we want tourism on the basis of what we think would be good for us. And so we tried to say, people should come to Hawaii, stay in the hotels, but kind of keep the people away from residential area. The residential remaining areas that people can stay home, do things and live and be very happy. And so we said, tourism, at the time that I became governor, there were 2 million tourists. When I left, we had worked it up to 4 million. I worked hard for tourism. I worked hard for the creation of new hotels so that people could stay at the hotels and not in residential areas. And that's what I tried to do when I was governor with the tourism industry. I felt also that in order for us to make a good living, we need to look at our economy, the rest of the economy. And we decided agriculture was very, very important. And for us to keep the plantations going as much as we can, but for also to take other ag lands, other ag products we can grow in Hawaii.
You know, going back to tourism, you know, you mentioned in your book, it's not about being for tourism or against tourism, rather it's the importance of managing it. And, you know, now with everything that's happening with Hawaii Tourism Authority, you know, are we going to be able to strike that balance between the two, in your opinion?
One of the things that made tourism function well in Hawaii was because the people of Hawaii felt good about them and expressed their aloha feeling to them. But things have changed a great deal. Now that people are beginning to go and live in residential areas, the people who live in those areas are beginning to say that tourism is humbug to them. And I think that's what we have to change. Tourism and tourists should be here and stay in tourist-related areas, and they don't interfere with people living in residential areas. And so I think that I use the word carrying capacity. There's a carrying capacity to everything that we do. And that's very important for us to remember that whatever we do, whether it's tourism or business, whatever, we work it up to the carrying capacity. Do it, use it until it's good for us. But if it goes beyond, then it's no longer good for us, beyond our carrying capacity.
Throughout the book, you also talk about the importance of engaging the public and having a dialogue with the greater community, not just the people that you want to talk with, you know, I mean, everybody. And, you know, that requires a faith in government, as you put it. So in your opinion, as you look at today's politics, have we lost our faith in our government, and how can we get it back, and whose responsibility is it to restore that faith?
I think leaders are very important to set policies, but I think we need to understand that setting policies does not mean the communities are going to be good. The community is only as good as the people in the community look at the policies, obey the policies, and try to move in that kind of direction. And I think, therefore, you need to get the thinking of people, set the policies, but figure out how those policies are going to work with the people in the community. For example, if you have a policy here in Oahu, if you have a policy that works very fine in the Waialaikahala area, which is very well-to-do community, the same policy is going to work very differently in Waianae and Anakuli, where the community is more rural. So we need to have the policies, okay, look at the policies. How can we make it work well in one community, also work well in another community? It makes very important for the people in these areas to come together and for them to have insight. When I established that I had many boards and commissions, and I want to fill those boards and commissions with people of different background, including those people in Waianae in the country areas, that they will have a say. They will be able to express their interest in how the community can be better. And so I tried to fill this slot. Swearing in ceremonies, I always went there and I told them, you may be surprised about being on this board commission, but it's by design. And I want you to participate. I want to speak up and say how important it is for the board and the commission to function in ways that make your community as good as it would happen in some other community. So people involvement is a very, very important thing. And sometimes you forget that. One of the things that I did that to me was very important was our state plan. Leaders can know what they want to do, but it's not enough if they try to do it without some idea of what the community wants. And you got to have, in some organized way, a way in which people can participate, no matter what it is, in agriculture, in tourism, whatever it is. People can say, oh, I want tourism to be in a certain kind of way. I want agriculture to be in a kind of way. And these kind of things, very important if you have people in the community participate and come and join. And that's what our state plan was all about. My state plan was not my plan. It's a plan where people came and they talked.
And it did have that, it had that engagement from the entire community. And as I understand it, that's something that you really wanted to make sure happened, that everyone was part of it. You know, what do you think about, some things that we see in the media? It's difficult for people now, it seems, to have discussions, and rather these discussions turn into arguments, and it's either one side or the other, and nobody can seem to find the middle. Yet Japan finds the middle, you found the middle. How can we, again, like, take it down a couple of notches and find that middle where we as a human species can really have a dialogue and not an argument?
Yes. You see, sometimes it's not the policy that's wrong. The policies may be very good. What you need to have is many people looking at it and seeing how it impacts them, and understanding that impacting somebody else must be done in a good way also. And this way you have a community behind the need for things to happen in our community. That's what I think we need the leaders to say, not only to say what leadership and policymakers are saying, but also to tell, oh, come, look at this, to our people. Look at it. I want your input too. And I want you to tell me what you think about it. Let me also say to you, when you tell me what you want to also think about, I want you to think, understand that I have some things to say to you also. And so it becomes a two-way street. And I think that's what makes our community better and more efficient.
And what do you think makes a good public servant? Is it that person that does bring everybody from all walks of life into the conversation?
Yes, I think a good public person knows what the community is all about, understands what the policies are and what has to be done. Having gone that far, they must now go and look to get the people involved and understand what the policies are. But we don't do that anymore. We take policies and we think we are correct, and we just go ahead with it. And there's no effort to explain and try to get the feelings of people. And oftentimes people feel something against the policy, not because it's wrong, but because they don't understand it. And it's important for leaders to understand it, it only works if those who are being governed will be also permitted to speak about government, how to govern. It's a two-way street.
So speaking of two-way streets, in the book you talk about the future and where you see our future being, and our future is the ocean and space, and you wrote interaction between life and earth and life above earth is the next chapter. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, but also in the book you share a very personal story about Ellison Onizuka, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. Ellison was a country boy, and although he became advanced society, he remained a country boy at feelings. And whenever he came to Hawaii, back to Hawaii, he would come to see me and he'd tell me, let's go visit some schools. He wanted to meet with young kids, children, and he wanted children to understand that nothing should be excluded from them, that the future belongs to them, the state belongs to them, the country belongs to them, and how they can participate is very, very important. And that's the message that Ellison Onizuka had for all the children. Always told them, don't think that some things are away from you. You can become part of that too. If you don't participate necessarily, you can understand and feel about what is taking place in our community. And Ellison played a very vital role in having that kind of teaching, making many people understand. And people say, hey, he's from the country, but he understands beyond what happens in the country. And he doesn't forget where he came from.
And for those who might not know who Ellison Onizuka was, he was an American astronaut, and he unfortunately was on the spaceship that blew up, and he passed. But he had asked you for something, a little item that he was going to take to space with him. That
photograph.
Okay, yeah. Photograph.
Yeah, he wanted a family photograph. He wanted to take it up and come back and autograph it and say that this flew into space. But the unfortunate accident happened. And 2 months later, I got a call from Lorna, his widow, telling me that they found his box. And in the box, they found only two things. One was our photograph and a monk's prayer in there. And I told her, oh, the photograph must be in terrible condition. She said, no, it's in perfect condition. And they want to hand it to me. And so NASA made a nice frame and used that photo and gave it back to us and saying, this photograph flew into space. Ellison was successful in making it happen.
I read that story, and it was just so touching.
Yes. You know, I think it's a very important. Ellison talked about the space. I think it's important for us to look at where we are. What do we have in our community? The space around us. We can participate in the best way, in the ways that we possibly can. We're close to the equator and in the ocean, and the equator turns like a ball turning. Right in the center, one turn, it goes farther than in the end over here. And so that's what we do. We spin together. And because we're closer, there are things that we can do without what's in space that maybe other places cannot do. And that's what we have to take advantage of. We need to study. Our people need to study. Our people need to look at what kind of things can happen in space that can be utilized by our people. The other thing that's important is the ocean. We are the only state in the country totally surrounded by the ocean. That ocean belongs to us. That ocean must be taken care of by us. And in the process of doing that, you must also look at ways in which it can provide economic benefit for our people. And so in both the space studies, the ocean studies, we need to have experts involved in these fields who can find ways in which we can get economic benefits out of our ocean and our space. Now, talking about that two spot, agriculture is a very important part of our economy. And before, at one time, agriculture, our Oriental farmers, they worked hard and they made the agriculture very successful. But most of them are gone now. And so agriculture is taking a different kind of turn. And we need to look at what we can do with agriculture. The state must help provide land as we provided for agriculture. The state must also try to get people involved, teaching them how to farm. We need young people to do farming. We need the university to be more involved in farming activities and teaching farming activities. What can be used for particular pesticide and the ways that it can be done without harmful. But also, to me, it's not more than just agriculture. You can't tell how people farm and grow things. You got to help them when they grow something. What are they going to do with it? We have to farm, help them to sell the product. Take our product, whatever it is. We grow agriculture and everything else. Made in Hawaii, used in Hawaii, purchased by those who will make it possible for the economy of the particular industry to function well.
Yeah, we definitely need that. We definitely need that help to assist one another. I'm going to take a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay, so Manuel Kuloloia wrote in and said, can you share any insight on the development of the Maui Prince Hotel in Makena when you were governor, and talk about your special relationship with Pandi Yokouchi and his State Foundation of Culture and Arts chairman. So I guess you know the Kuloloia Ohana, of course, and this is Manuel's question. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Let me take Pudney first. Pudney was a very close friend of mine. I respect him, friendship, but he was kind of a long-term relative also. So Pandi was a very, very good person. He was forward-thinking. And when governor told him that he wanted to put him on the Art Foundation, Pandi's response was, I don't know anything about arts. But he learned quickly. Governor said, but that's why a person like you must also become part of the foundation. And Pandi became a very important part of the art foundation here in our community. Maui Art and Culture Foundation. Pandi was instrumental in helping to raise the monies to do that. Pandi was a very good developer. So people utilized land on Maui in ways that have been good for the residents and good for people to come back. I was chairman of the company that ran the Maui of the hotels. And in the process of running the hotel, I always talk to them about, we got to remember that we are part of the community and we got to respect people's water rights. We got to respect open space and that agriculture, farming, any kind of use hotels, and that we must not try to exclude anything else. People come and have to enjoy the hotel, enjoy Maui.
Okay. Wonderful. Let's see, Rod Sekimoto is saying that in Hawaii, all the beaches have public access. When did this come about, and were you, Governor, involved in the public access law to the beaches in Hawaii?
Well, not so much the law, because that's done by the counties, but the idea of having our mountains our oceans, our parks being part of our local enjoyment was a very important factor in my decision in whatever I did. And I want every part of our public lands to be open and to be used by all people. And at the same time, I would say that the users must respect and help to keep our beaches clean, our mountains in good condition. And I think it's a good thing. Enjoy it, but protect also.
Rod also is asking about the homeless problem. How would you, Governor, go about solving this problem today if you were still in politics, homeless?
If you look at the homeless problem and try to solve it only in the context of the people who are here, we're going to have a very difficult time if we have from outside homeless coming into our community, because we do make things very comfortable for local homeless people. So we have to think also about express that concern. We want to take care of our homeless people, but express some concern about homeless people from outside Hawaii coming to Hawaii because we take care of homeless in Hawaii.
And you talk about that in your book about making sure to take care of our Hawaii homeless contingent first before, having all the other homeless groups come in. There's always that talk that different states will put their homeless on a plane with a one-way ticket to Hawaii. I don't know if that you ever experienced that, if that was a big issue during your time, but definitely it's not an easy answer, is it?
Yes, it is not. But I think what's important is for us to look at what are the things that are important to us. Take care of the homeless people, but also take care of them because we don't want them out of parks and the streets and defecating and dirtying the parks and the public areas, because those areas belong to Hawaii's people, enjoyment of people who live in Hawaii.
Right. Kevin Kawamoto says, hello, Governor Ariyoshi. When you were governor, I went to Washington Place for a volunteer awards ceremony hosted by First Lady Jean Ariyoshi. Another Mrs. Ariyoshi was there, your mother, who Kevin had a chance to talk to. Kevin says he imagines how proud your parents must have been of your historic achievements. Question is this: did they ever talk to you about how proud or amazed they were by what you were able to accomplish in their lifetime? Great question.
Not so much they're telling me anything, but I know how they felt about what we were doing in our community, because they were part of our community. And they talk about my mother. My mother, one of the things that my mother did was make manju. And she was always making manju. Visitors came and she was made manju to give to people so they can enjoy that too. But I enjoyed my life at Washington Place because the people who were there, who worked there, also felt very strongly, same kind of feelings of wanting to keep Washington Place a nice place in which to live. So did all the things, keep it clean, help it get it cooked, help us, my mother also lived there. It was I think, two-way street. And they understood what they wanted to do for us. We understood what they wanted from them. And we worked together. And working together, everything we do in our community, every person in our community should understand that the people they come in contact with together. And always a question: are we doing the things that make them happy? Are they doing the things that make us happy? We must live together, we must work together, we must do things that will be good for each other. That's what a good community is all about.
Well, there are a lot of people writing in just expressing their aloha and mahalo for all that you've done. John Tamashiro is asking, what do you consider to be your greatest achievement during your 12 years as governor?
I think it is my working together with people. I'm very proud of the fact that I reached out, board and commission, people coming in. I addressed every meeting that they had, swearing ceremonies, and told them that they were there by design. I wanted every person to participate, reaching out to the community, making people understand that once into work, they cannot be only concerned about themselves. They got to also be concerned about, oh, this policy works well in this area, but how does it work in other areas? Be willing to make that adjustment so that things are good. And I think what I'm very happy about was that people during my time came together, responded, and wanting to do for each other, help each other, enjoy life, but be sure that somebody else is able to enjoy life in the same kind of way. And that's a feeling I want to have in our community. That's what to me Hawaii is all about.
That's a wonderful achievement, and I think it also speaks to the importance of the law of aloha that you wrote about in your book as well, and how unique that makes Hawaii and how special that is. And not everyone might know that there is an aloha law written into the state constitution, right, Governor? That we must be aloha. And I don't know if that was during your time that the aloha law was implemented or not, but you definitely talk about it in the book. And our greatest resource of humans, of just our human capital.
Yeah. I think many things that happen, the same thing that happens can be very bad and not very useful. If some people are very happy with it and other people are not because we don't try to accommodate both sides. People coming together, feeling for each other, enjoying what they do, but wanting to be sure that somebody else enjoys life in Hawaii in the very same kind of way. That mutual feeling to me is very important in our community. We must never ever lose that.
No.
And that's
Do you think we are losing it, or do you believe in the power of aloha and the fact that we will always have it?
no, I think we're losing something. Just in the tourism industry, when people at one time very happy and when I extend aloha to tourists, now they're kind of feeling differently because they can feel that tourism is coming to areas in which where they are living, and that's interfering with their life. We must not let that happen.
I'm going to ask one last question. And again, Governor, there are just so many people writing, just thanking you and sending you their aloha and their love. Christine Dennehy used to be the secretary for Kenji Ito of Japan Travel Bureau International in New York after he had been stationed in Hawaii. And she just wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about the importance of promoting Hawaii to Japan in the 1980s and the 1990s.
Yeah. The promotion of the Japan and US point. Ambassador Mansfield talked about that. Coming together, the most important pact was that between America and Japan coming together. And she was not bar none. And that's what I think is a country that was not democratic at one time, becoming democratic nation, Asian nation, a democratic nation on this side, coming together and doing things that will be good for each other, but beyond just doing things for each other, doing things that might be good in the region. And so the US-Japan relationship is not only between Japan and the United States, but an effort to make sure that in that process, we accommodate and we make things better for the rest of Asia and for America.
Thank you. We are gently coming to the end of our talk. Governor, I'm going to come back to you in just a few minutes for you to give some closing remarks. To the person who asked, yes, this is going to be available on our YouTube channel, so we hope you can check it out. And Governor, I will send you a list of all of the beautiful notes that people have been sending in, including that you just epitomize grace and aloha, and so does First Lady Jean Ariyoshi. But again, we want to thank everybody for being with us today. Our upcoming speakers, next Tuesday on May 18th, we have Paul Kosasa. He is the CEO of the ABC stores. He's going to be talking about leadership, philanthropy, and also a little bit about his parents' time in the Tule Lake internment camp. And then in June, on June 11th, we have Wayne Osako, who is with the Stamp Our Story Committee. He and a group of individuals were able to get the Go for Broke stamp, Make It Happen, which is going to be coming out early June. So he's going to talk to us about that, the Stamp Our Story. And then our next afternoon with the author is going to be June 19th, and that is going to be local author Scott Kikawa, who wrote Kona Wins. Some very great, interesting talks coming up. But I want to bring it back to you, Governor. You know, you wrote this book as a guide. You wrote it for that next generation. What do you want to have come of it?
I want people to understand that they should enjoy Hawaii, but be sure that they leave Hawaii in a way that others can also enjoy. That's the stewardship. Enjoy it, but keep it nice so that others can enjoy.
We also have a few of our high school students on this call today, and they had written in some questions earlier about, you know, how can one get involved with public service? Do you have to have elected office to be a public servant, or, you know, what can they do at a young age to be more involved?
You know, that's a very important question, because it is an answer for most people. Only a few elected officials. Most of the rest of people are citizens in our community. And there is a place for them to, they have to think of what they want Hawaii to be. Don't let other people, only leaders, so-called leaders, decide what is good for them. They have to look at what the economy is. They should be most concerned about what kind of things can they do to make the economy stronger. What kind of things they can do to make the people enjoy Hawaii as we used to enjoy them. And so it's a two-way street that local people who are not leadership in their daily lives can do to make it possible for the economy to be good and to enjoyment of life to be good, but also to be studied enough so that you can express those needs to those who are so-called leaders. Don't leave it only up to them. Participate also by thinking what's good for Hawaii in your own way.
Very wise words. Governor, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. As I said before, you've always been a true friend of the center. I also want to thank your daughter-in-law, Ms. Chika, who helped put all of this together, and we would be remiss in not sending our aloha to your lovely wife, Ms. Jean. And for anybody else, if you're interested in the book, it's available on your website, Governor, correct?
I don't know.
It is. It is available on the governor's website. And if anybody is interested in the book, just email me and we'll send you the link. I know we sold a couple of copies already, but
before we end up, I just want to tell you my personal feelings about you and what you do in the community. I think you do a great job. I first met you when you were the protocol officer for the governor, and you did a great job in making me very comfortable coming up to the Capitol all that time. You have continued on Maui with the Maui Center, and I know also that politics has been a part of your life also. And please don't give it up.
You know, you were very, very kind. When I did run for office, I called you, you had me come over to your office, and you sat with me easily for 45 minutes. And I still have the notebook, and I meant to bring it in today and I didn't. I still have the notebook of your suggestions, and I tell you, they were mirrored in your book about being fair and engaging and having dialogue. And I can't thank you enough, and your words are very kind, and I appreciate those.
Thank you. Thank you for all you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, thank you so much. You'll find this on our YouTube channel, and check out our website for upcoming events. Again, Governor, thank you very, very much. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. And we'll see you again soon, I hope.
日本語も上手だね。
Yeah. Amara. All right. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Really.